Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining, whether you're dialing in live or whether you're watching this as a pre-recording. My name is Daniel Whittle. I'm the General Manager for Managed Services at Wildtech. I am here today to talk with you around rethinking your managed service provider, how to unlock strategic value from your provider. I will probably talk for about 15 to 30 minutes today. We'll go through some slides. I'll do some Q&As in the chat. Feel free to, everyone who's joined, ask you questions as we're going, and I'll be trying to keep up with the questions in the background. So thank you for dialing in. I will get started. I see few people just joining in, so just letting people get through, and then we'll jump into it. Okay, a little bit about who Wildtech are, just so you know who's talking. Wildtech are a end-to-end IT service provider. We look after everything from a laptop on your desk all the way through the um, project management chains, all the way up to implementations for major ERPs, CRMs, and cloud solutions. And more recently, as the world's shifting, playing very heavily into the AI space. Wildtech focus into many different areas, but we are specially skilled in the retail, supply chain, manufacturing, professional services, and ESG spaces. Wildtech have been working with Microsoft, Oracle, NetSuite, and SAP as a core partnership group for probably the past 5 years, and we're seeing a whole bunch of different trends and changes in that world as those different partners invest differently into the technologies, and we see different impacts and changes across the board with our customers and everybody else involved. Where are we and where we position? So Wildtech are an international business by all rights. We are across Australia in every major state and territory, as well as also offices in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. We're now at 90 staff members, so it's a fair few people to keep a hold of. But yeah, we're across a few places there. Okay, so what I want to talk to you guys today about is thinking about productivity. And we know that as a country, Australia has an issue with productivity. You don't need to really try too hard to look on the news or go through articles to see that there's another conversation about a business struggling with productivity or the government's talking about challenges achieving better productivity. There's pretty strong statistics out there suggesting that productivity has taken a nosedive in the past sort of 5 to 10 years, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. The ABS has been tracking productivity as an average over the past 20 years for quite some time, and statistically shows that we are falling short of the mark. Um, Compared internationally, Australia is dipping. However, it's always hard to compare a true productivity gauge against GDPs and other countries. Um, Due to that productivity issue, we do see with our partners and with our customers a lot of different businesses looking to use AI to enable productivity, right? So everybody's looking to go, how can I use technology to enable productivity in my business? I've got too many people not able to get enough outcomes in my business, and I need to work on that. So can I use technology to do that? Microsoft, the CEO of the Tech Council at Microsoft, made a statement a few months back to say that generative AI itself could contribute up to over $100 billion annually to Australia's economy by 2030, with 70% of its growth driven by productivity gains. So what we're saying there is a significant amount of billion of dollars contributing to productivity gains through generative AI. So everyone's got this elusive AI story. What does it mean? How is it going to impact my productivity? And we see that across multiple customers. So if we look at the state of play as we go through these, one of the key reasons as to the productivity issues across the country is the rising cost pressures. We know across the board we've got mortgage price issues. We've got everyday items are extremely expensive compared to where they were. So businesses need to be more productive. Ultimately, you have less dollars to spend, and you need to make sure that as your business, you're getting the best return and then maximizing your return on investment on every dollar spent. And that allows you to be more competitive. When we work with our retail customers specifically, we see the more efficient retail businesses behind the scenes have the best pricing, they have the best operations because they can pass that to the customer and actually be more competitive behind the scenes. From an AI perspective, we see it being adopted fearlessly. So, people are adopting, and businesses and our partners are adopting AI, and sometimes without even thinking about it properly, they're just starting to use it because all of a sudden it's providing benefits and productivity gains immediately in the face value. Um, I'm getting some questions behind the scenes, so I am going to come back to those. So bear with me for one moment. Um, on a security perspective, security is an ongoing conversation. It's been around the technology and business space for many years. It's not going away anywhere soon. And from our perspective, the way that we see it is it'll continue to create obstacles to productivity investments. It's great to have the most um, super high quality tech security stack within your business, and have all the roadblocks and things in place, but unfortunately that can create friction with the users and make things less productive. So security is an important part to talk about when we're talking about technology partners, and making sure that the right amount of security is put in place, but not too much. It's got to be relative to the business. And we see an increased resilience on managed service providers or IT providers in businesses today. There's some stats that I'll go through in a couple of slides, but we see a large reliance on businesses really leaning on their IT providers to make them more productive. Um, just a quick question. We currently have a provider looking after security and another for our tech support. Good question. I will come back to that one soon. I'm going to go through how that might work shortly. So to touch on that reliance on a service provider, we see, and Gartner published an article a few months ago showing that over half of the Australian mid-market and enterprise businesses are actually depending on a service provider. Now that's a lot. You talk about the amount of hundreds of millions of dollars that are transacting through the market, where you're relying on your service provider to run your business. And look, that might be as small as having an internet connection. It might be as small as having a small support agreement, but it might be a whole outsourced solution. Um, those hours add up, right? So I've got a question for everybody who's watching to think about and to pose the question: is how many hours does your service provider spend on your business each month to perform their services? And if I ask you that question, you might think, oh, it's 10 hours, 20 hours. Okay. Do you really know? But secondly to that, how many hours does your MSP or service provider actually spend improving your business on a monthly basis? Two very different things, right? And when you start asking those questions, it does prompt the thought to say, okay, that's a lot of hours in my business, regardless if it's for a service contract. That's a lot of time and a lot of energy going into my business. So how do you track that? How do you know what to do with that information? And how do you know whether your service provider is improving your business or not? Well, first, you have to be able to sit back and review your service provider and what's actually happening. So we've worked back with our partners. We've looked at and leveraged their relationships around us to develop a benchmarking study to assist you and to assist people in the market to basically assess your provider's performance. We've broken down the study into 11 key areas. That includes areas like responsiveness, security, and also value for money. So it's just the purpose behind this benchmark study is to effectively give you a conversation starter. This is not, and no one-stop quick solution is going to be able to tell you exactly where all of your issues lie. We'd be lying if we said that was what this was going to do. But there's a couple of screenshots I think that are being shared on the screen right now, and you'll see you can go to a web link, you hit start, you answer a few questions, work your way through a form, and then your output, which you'll see on the right hand side, shows the IT provider has received a rating of something. And that'll give you an idea as to whether or not the services that you're expecting to receive are aligned with what your business requires. How is that actually broken out in layman's terms? There's different categories, different criteria as to how these different ratings are provided. We start with, on the left, deficient. Deficient means frequently fails to resolve issues, lacks understanding of key systems or tools. Performance poses a risk to operations, right? So now we're talking about a pretty low end provider or set of services being provided, and we work our way through to the right with basic. Basic being struggles with moderately complex tasks, often requires supervision or rework, may not stay current with industry standards. Competent, capable of handling routine tasks effectively, requires occasional support for advanced or unusual issues, and meets most expectations. And then we see proficient and expert. So proficient being handles most technical tasks independently with minimal guidance, stays up to date with latest technologies, and provides solid recommendations. And then you move into expert. An expert is the provider who solves issues efficiently, but importantly, proactively recommends advanced improvements. They are what we probably say is a trusted advisor in the technology space. And if we think back to what I was discussing around the state of the play, have a strong impact across each of those different areas, the productivity impact on your business, the AI adoption, linking in with that productivity, and the security as well of your organization. So what I'd like to suggest for everybody who's tuned into the webinar today, takes 2, 3 minutes, do the survey, have a look, go through the questions, takes a few minutes just to click on the answers, start a conversation with your manager, whether it's your direct line manager or whether it's somebody else in your business, start that conversation and really ask that question, is my service provider adding that value to my business? Are they making me more productive as an organization? And then don't in what we're trying to also say here is don't just accept that what service is being provided is enough for your business. Make sure you're constantly asking that question. And the purpose behind this is not to just go out there and, let's say, bag every other service provider in the industry. The value here is in actually having those conversations and providing you with a tool to take to your service providers and have that conversation. You might determine in those conversations that you don't have a solid fit and you're just, the provider's just keeping the light on, right? They're just pressing buttons. However, you might establish that they've got a broader capability that you're also not tapping into. And that capability that you're not tapping into might be a game changer for your organization. There are many service providers out there that can do more than just plug in a modem or can do more than just answer a phone call. There are providers now getting right up into the AI space. They're really technically strong with security and can change a lot of things in your business for the better. So discuss those productivity investments. Have a look at what's not being done, what could be done, and spark that conversation. And this survey should be able to be a tool for you to start that conversation internally to take forward to your provider. From a WildTech perspective, we have a very straightforward model in how we provide our services. We plug into your business at a top level, and the reason why we lay it out so simple like this is because to enable your business to be productive, we look at taking on a few different key areas. One of those is the risk. There's a lot of time spent in your business, whether it's by your internal team or whether it's by a different provider potentially, managing that risk in your business. While take on a lot of that risk from a service provider perspective. So the value that we can provide is we can actually take on risk. What does that look like functionally? I'll talk through. Um, Compliance, we take on your compliance risks and concerns and issues. So when you're looking at whether you need to have HIPAA requirements in the healthcare sector, ISO requirements, what are those compliances that you need to be ultimately compliant with? And how do you make that happen without having to go through all the legwork and all the issues to get to that point? If you spend your time focusing on those two areas, are you really being productive in your own business, right? And are you really generating your own business value behind it? Provided service guarantees. So Wildtech will provide you a dedicated guarantee of services that you're expecting to achieve. And what we are also doing is innovating. So how we innovate and how we do that as part of our services is we actually have a few different areas, but the innovations hub is ultimately what changes the game. So where we see the most value, and we're starting to see other providers start to do this around the ecosystem now, is take their services and use them almost as a data mining tool to take towards a innovations space within the service provider's business. So say for example, we talk about the amount of time that you spend in or a service provider spends in your business. They might spend 30 hours a week taking phone calls, right? Crazy. But are you using that time to provide business value at the end? That person who's taking that call has a lot of IP about your business all of a sudden. They know everything that happens, right? They know that the finance person goes on lunch breaks every however many hours, or they know that this is what they do in that system. They know how the underlying piece of the business work. What we do with that at WildTech is we take all of that and we put it into the innovations hub and present back solutions to businesses to automate and streamline business processes. What that's done is developed um, material dollar value outcomes, right, for customers. So you end up in a scenario where you were just paying for somebody to help press buttons every 6 weeks because something kept going wrong, into a scenario where, oh, by the way, here's a maybe potentially AI, or here's a solution of some sort from the innovations team that's helped to automate and streamline that process. Okay, great. That's reduced the reliance on the service. It's improved my productivity as a business. I'm probably spending less now on my service, and I can actually move on and do bigger and better things. In the other areas, just to touch on, wild tech specialist areas, security, network, infrastructure, and support. Typical frameworks for business support. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on some questions. I've been seeing some come through, so I'm going to just quickly throw to those now. Um, we had a question around a provider looking after security and another for our tech support. Should they be the same provider? So let me just move back to answer that question. Um, it's not uncommon to see different providers specialize in different areas, and that's totally fine. It's an area that makes sense. But the question that you have to ask for your business is, are you spending time doubling up on having to manage those providers? Do you have two or three different providers doing different things? It's not only two or three different sets of conversations that you have to have, but it's also two or three different sets of invoices that you have to pay. That's two or three different sets of people you have to communicate to when something changed in your business. There's two or three different sets of documentation that are out there about your business in the world, right? Compared to just one streamlined, smooth relationship. Now, there's benefits to going specialist, and there's providers that are really great for that. But it's a productivity question to consider. Are you wasting time managing all those providers? One of the questions here in the background, it's hard to make the case for switching MSPs when the value of benefits feels vague to my peers, but the cost of change is real. What is best to focus on here? So what we're talking about there is people not quite probably understanding the case of wanting to change provider. Why would I want to change provider? What's it actually going to do for my business? And we've got to look at it from a cost perspective. I think that's probably the most important thing. Cost in terms of bottom line cost of doing business, but also at the top around maximizing your return on investment. So for every dollar spent, are you actually achieving more? You might have a bunch of strategic operational plans in your mind as a business over the next 3 to 6 months, but have you actually considered whether or not that you're going to go and spend more in the long term, or can you get them done in a better way? And another question: how can non-technical leaders push for this without getting stuck in jargon or resistance? So a good call out here is you don't need to be a technical leader to push for change. As a business leader in your business, what productivity looks like, and you can say whether or not a service provider or range of services is increasing or reducing productivity. You don't need the technical knowledge. You don't need to be specifically set on knowing everything, but it's straightforward to know that if you go and do something over here, does it provide value or not? And that's the conversation. You don't need to be the IT manager to have this conversation. Um, Question from Yes, just did the survey. Some of the questions aren't clarifying, e.g., you asked how soon the provider responds and results. It probably depends on the severity issue. Yeah, and look, that's a fair point. Yes, I think to call out to that point, the survey is a conversation starter, right? We aren't looking to provide here a mass amount of breakdowns, and we could probably waste your time diving into a bunch of assumptions that have to be taken account for. It's about really understanding, okay, from your belief of what if you interpret that question in a certain way, if you answer it in a certain way, and it gives you the conversation to say, yeah, you're right, I need to start that conversation. It might actually return back to say, no, you know what, it's actually okay. um we're actually fine with where we are, thanks, and that's cool. That's what the intentions are. But the goal here is to go, okay, expectations are here, not happy here, there's something to be spoken about. I hope that answers your question. Cool. Guys, I'm going to wrap up. It's been 20 minutes of me talking. I hope you took something valuable out of today's webinar. Thank you for dialing in. We will follow up with an email with links and such to be provided to the survey. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to have a follow on conversation. Thank you.